There is one thing everyone in the New World fears. There is nothing more beautiful, more terrifying, more awe-inspiring than the Monster Hunter world. Today, the nature of the beast, Bazelgeuse, our friendly bomber boy who just wants to hang out, have fun, and violently explode you and everything you care about, just for the giggles. Okay, it's for, self-sustenance and the propagation of the species, but giggles plays better in an emphatic speech. Oh yes, my fellow scholars, welcome then to this, the next Monster Hunter lore, Nature of the Beast, and I couldn't thank you enough for the warm words and happy reception to the Nergigante episode last week. As I said then, and will say again now, the ecology of these creatures is what truly hooked me on Monster Hunter for life, and I cannot express enough how much I love both learning about them and then expressing that to you guys. So without further ado then, everyone's favourite invader. No. The other everyone's favourite invader. B-52 bomber Bazelgeuse. He is something else. One of the largest flying creatures in Monster Hunter, which is an impressive feat of itself. A nomadic, roaming predator, though some believe they do have a nesting site deep within the Elder's Recess and propagate out from there. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. There is nowhere safe from a bombing run. From the deepest depths of the Rotten Vale to the highest beautiful peaks of the Coral Highlands and everywhere else in between, you are never quite safe from that. Bazel then is an Elder Dragon level monster. He is an apex predator and dominates any given environment he chooses to exist in, and he can exist in all of them. He is the explosive scale wyvern, the invading tyrant, and he has a brutally effective hunting strategy that is as beautiful as it is horrifying. But first and foremost, flight. As I said, Bazel is big. He's chunky. And despite that, he can fly for a long time. Like, a long time. This is achieved by his wingspan and the sheer scale of said wings. It allows him to glide for miles and miles using minimal energy and minimal flaps. This is very similar to the wandering albatross, the extant bird with the largest wingspan, up to 3.5 meters. So if you were to lie down next to it, well, it would dwarf you, more than likely. Apologies to anyone out there who is over 12 feet tall and still enjoying Monster Hunter lore. This is quite ridiculous, especially compared to the size of its body relatively, and the Wandering Albatross can stay airborne for up to 22,000 kilometers. It can circumnavigate the globe in almost 46 days. And superstitiously, the albatross following a ship out to sea was seen as a sign of good luck. And it was said that an albatross contains the soul of a dead sailor, and that if you were to kill one, you would pay the price. What's this got to do with Bazel? Not much. but I be never passing up an opportunity for a little bit of pirate folklore. Even the little run-up that Bazel does before taking off into his bombing run, yes, is indicative of a plane on a runway to his bombing plane motif, but is also because of his wingspan. It is big, and it's not made for beating but gliding. It's the same reason that despite being such expert stay in the airers, albatrosses are quite not super adept at either taking off or landing just instantly. They have to get that initial gust of wind, they have to do a run, they have to get that little help, and it's a really neat little detail. In any case, Bazel uses this very same mechanism. Minimal energy, minimal movement, massive wings that can turn even the slightest gust into a lot of forward momentum and upwards lift. But these wings don't stop with just flight. They can even aid Bazel in ground locomotion, where it can be a little bit on the clumsier side. But it really cannot be stressed how far Bazels do roam. In fact, they have recently been discovered to inhabit the regions around Kimura Village, where they have developed a very strange talent.
I'm the Bazel Bommy Boy, gonna toy with you like, well, oh, a toy. Oh boy, if you're hunting, I drop in. If you're sleeping, I drop in. If you're doing literally anything, I drop in with a boom! We is Ninja Tomb, looking to defeat me, at best you're a grade me. 52 reasons why when you face me you will die. Anywhere and everywhere that you can fit the dummy there's a yes to spare. It's not fast, son. Now who's up for a little bit of a bombing run?
And it should be said then that even something as fearsome as the Tigrex to a Bazelgeuse is simply fresh meat, a real testament to its power, and it wants to be high up for its, well, signature pièce de résistance. These explosive scales, though in truth they're not scales, drop from on high, hit the ground, and it just so happens that impact destabilizes them, causing a rapid chemical reaction and a subsequent boom. Now, I don't think I need to exaggerate or really stress that when hunting animal prey, using literally fiery explosions tends to work out well. It's beautiful, but as I said earlier, also horrifying. And the thing is, it's not unprecedented to weaponize fire from above in such a manner. There are plenty of bird species that hunt via spotting a forest fire and picking off the animals fleeing from it, as all they care about at that moment is, I'm gonna burn alive! And not so much, I sure hope there isn't a bird of prey having a look at me right now. In fact, some take it even further. Some birds have been reportedly known to pick up a flaming branch and drop it somewhere there currently isn't a fire in order to start one to then get the easy pickings, which is devilishly clever, but, you know, emphasis on devilishly. And when we look at Bazel and his mass dropping of scales over a large swath of land, you can see something similar. An entire herd can be set panicked and running as everything explodes and sets ablaze around them, and then Bazel himself crashes down into his chosen victim and simply has to gorge himself on the remains. And it should be no surprise then why Bazel is an apex invader capable of competing with anything, anywhere. It's hard to combat the heat, force, and fury of repeated explosions. It's why Brachydios is so successful too, in his own way, with a similar mechanism, albeit achieved very differently with his slime. There are only a few monsters of Elder Dragon level power and above that can handle it. And in fact, Bazel himself handling his own explosions is an impressive feat of adaptation. See, in truth, the deadliest part of Bazel's explosive scales, again, not scales, isn't so much the heat, the fire, the shock and awe of it. It's the blast wave, the force from the detonation. See, when you get hit by the rapid expansion of air caused by an explosion, well, flesh rapidly compresses and your organs, they rupture, your veins will explode, hell, even your eyes can just pop out of their sockets, depending on the force, of course, but when you are taking his impacts at point blank, yeah, that is quite nasty. But Bazel, as I say, as you see, takes his own explosions effortlessly, and that's due to the design of his scales, their layering, and how effectively they work as shock absorbers. They let the energy dissipate before they get to anything vital that can't afford to be damaged, spread and release throughout his scale pattern. An easy example is the difference between, well, this weight impacting solid metal versus something of a similar structure to what Bazel's shell would have to mimic, and the difference is stark. Instantly cushioned and reduced to nothing versus that solid impact that causes such damage to those not evolved for it. And that, coupled with his sheer size and strength to throw around, albeit clumsily, as Bazel hasn't really got a lot going for him if his scales don't work. He, yes, is big, yes, with that comes some strength, but he's not exactly skilled in combat, for want of a better phrasing. He has no real fallback option. He has a fire breath, but that's short range, weak compared to other wielders of flame, and is mostly there to ignite his inert scales. He does so by either impacting them himself, his prey accidentally doing so, even his roar is loud enough that the vibrations will set off otherwise dormant scales. His explosive pockets are inert when against his body. It keeps them from reacting, but as soon as they detach, well, the slightest disturbance will set them off in a glorious chain reaction. And he is very aware of this and is very adept at making it happen. But, as I say, when Bazel meets his match... Sorry, I don't know how that got in there. When Bazel meets his match, another creature that can handle his explosions, well, he tends to back off. Though not if that creature is another Bazel. They can be fiercely territorial and will defend their vast territory and right to hunt, and will quite often easily be lured into conflict with another of its kind, even going so far as to ignore other threats like hunters in favor of defeating this would-be rival. Whether this is entirely territorial or rooted in the right to mate is unknown, but the aggression is clear. Bazels are solitary creatures, likely only ever meeting another one of their kind in a friendly manner to propagate their species. Bazels have exceptional hearing, and the sounds caused by scuffles of monsters, their roars, draw it like a moth to a flame, either to defend its territory once more, or to hunt. This is why they are truly party crashers, and if a Bazel is in the area, well, it will not be long until it makes its presence known at anything untoward going on. A hunter knows all too well they have a timer should a clash begin with a Bazel spotted nearby. And given their gliding nature, they are, despite their size, quite capable silent flyers. The first many know, and indeed last know, of a Bazel's presence is the blink of an eye as it crashes into them. So, let's finally address the explosions, the scales that are again not scales. They are, more accurately, simply solidified body fluids that take the shape of scales, yes, but you have to think a bit more like explosive expanding foam that comes out of special glands in the basil's neck, tail, and hardens upon contact with the air and leaves itself gently attached to the basil, easily loosed with minimal movement. The basil doesn't so much control where and when they go, just that it keeps producing them and that they will keep falling off, and if you have enough explosions over a large enough area, you're going to get the job done. And these glands work overtime, consistently replacing dropped scales. I'm going to call them scales still because it's easiest to get the point across. Consistently pumping out this fluid. It hardens, it drops, it pumps out, it hardens, it drops, reloading and reloading all over again. Eventually, the basil will run dry, its reserves exhausted, but that can take quite the while. The fluid itself is liquid and hot inside the basil, but cools externally into the bombs that we know and for the most part love. It really is an ingenious, both defensive and offensive adaptation, and does make Basil one of the most dangerous creatures, not just discovered in the New World, but in Monster Hunter in general. When angered, Bazelgeuse's body temperature rises rapidly. Adrenaline is produced and pumped round its body, not dissimilar to Deviljho, and this causes the normally dormant scales to start glowing, dangerously close to exploding even while attached. This causes them to explode very quickly upon detaching, no longer needing that extra push from some form of disturbance. This intense orange marbling is a scary sight, and very much means that Basil is just a little bit ticked off, and will now go out of its way to make sure whatever caused it to enter this state stops moving, breathing, existing, and generally being in one piece as soon as possible. It doesn't have a strong bite, it's not capable of using its mouth offensively. Hell, it can't even finish entire meals if it has managed to kill something with a notoriously otherwise tough hide. Basil really is opportunistic, and there's nothing that it won't go after, even sometimes to its own detriment. The Basil's variant then, Seething, is a whole other beast. Of course, in its base, very similar, but the extremes of its power much greater. What exactly causes this variant is unknown, though simply age is the leading theory. As the basil grows over time, its fluid gets more intense, more refined, and more explosive. It also loses its ability to completely harden, remaining sticky. The scales, when detached, attach to surfaces and indeed prey, making them much deadlier. The explosive size then is also much deadlier. Bright pink now from this slight change in the chemical's makeup, and slowly it will expand and pop. This basil capable of the Crimson Lotus state, where the previous oranges now take on a more purpley pink, and it is capable of detonating all scales at once in a quite literal mimicry of a nuclear blast. It truly is a sight to behold. For whatever reason in the New World, this variant keeps to the Elder's Recess. However, it has been discovered in the Old World too now, so clearly is capable of a similar lifestyle to its regular counterpart. In any case, the basil is one mighty predator. Dominant, ferociously aggressive, and unimaginably powerful. Widespread and to be feared. There are few monsters, especially outside of the Elder Dragon class, that have a more deadly weapon at its disposal, and wherever Bazelgeuse chooses to roam, let it be known that all that call that place home best keep one eye on the sky. I hope then, ladies and gentlemen, you enjoyed this. Bazelgeuse B-52 bomber is quite exceptional and is not only in line for the most iconic theme in World and Iceborne, just in general. That, as he arrives, is exceptional, and I really do adore this monster, and is one of the greatest creations that World has given us, and I think he has taken his place already in the Hall of Legends throughout the rest of Monster Hunter's existence. He really just is fun in everything that he does, the chaos he causes. I really adore him, and it has been a pleasure to tell his story. In any case, then, let me know who you'd like to see next. But for now, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.